You know what else is coming up in October? Liberty Fest NYC.
Oh, yes.
And
you're going to that,
I don't know now, because I was supposed to debate Jeffrey Tucker there, and Jeffrey Tucker is backed out.
And this was what, use of force debate?
No, it was the brutalist humanitarian thing, the thick, thin libertarian thing, the raw non-aggressionist versus the I want to add a whole bunch of doohickeys to my libertarianism crap, right?
I don't really know what you mean. So wait, what's the thick, thin? Explain that for listeners.
Okay, so the thin libertarian position would be that non-aggression principle, period, right? End of list, if you will. That the initiation of force is immoral and impermissible, and all else is go for it, right? And if you don't like it, then you just don't associate it with it. And that's
that's
thin libertarianism. Now, thick libertarianism.
And is that your perspective, the thin libertarian?
Yes, I'm a Rothbardian anarcho-capitalist, and if it's not non-aggression, it's not part of my political position, right? I'm concerned with the use of force in society, and I stand in good company with that, with Lou Rockwell and Tom Woods and a number of other people. Jeffrey Tucker also used to write from that perspective, and you could go read Jeffrey Tucker's older writings at the Mises Institute, where he says some pretty edgy things, but at some point he got hooked up with Kathy Reisenwitz and Students for Liberty and some other like Koch brothers funded outfits who were funding his efforts at liberty.me, and this led apparently to a change in opinion that, now we must be very concerned about being sensitive to certain protected groups of people, certain ethnic groups, and a particular gender is now deserving of special care and sensitivity, and this is something that I can't stand. I think that that's just ridiculous. Treat people as people, and I don't really care if they're men or women or blacks or whites, and I don't think that there are protected classes of people. So in any case, I had written an article in response to him. He wrote an article against libertarian brutalism, where he reduced that non-aggression core libertarian principle down to this style of architecture, and I said, this is Jeffrey Tucker's case against libertarianism. And it set off this whole entire thing. This is why my house has been nicknamed the Brutalist House, and why I had a...
You've really embraced this brutalist.
Yeah, I thought
term.
It was great, because it was actually like an astute reference, right? Like, the thing is, I didn't really like the article that he put out, but it was an astute reference that brutalism is this like style of architecture that really valued like function over form. It didn't much care for aesthetics, right? And for that reason, it sort of became popular with like socialist governments, because they just wanted to show it as like a form of, as a show of like function and strength. Right, so I didn't like being associated with socialist governments, obviously, but it was an astute reference that I'm like, no, this is function over form. This is not concerned with aesthetics. This is the position, and if you follow it through to its rational conclusions, you reach good outcomes.
All right, so let me jump back real quick on the thick and thin libertarianism before we go on to what happened with Jeffrey Tucker and the New York convention that you're going to be allegedly attending, maybe. So thick versus thin libertarianism defined as only looking at the non-aggression principle, the idea that it's wrong to aggress against your neighbors for political or social purposes or whatever purpose, to initiate aggression against people. And you're saying thick libertarianism has more to do with that. My understanding of thick, and then correct me if I'm wrong, would be that somebody who adheres to this idea of thick libertarianism is one who says that, well, in order to have a functioning society, we need more than just the non-aggression principle. So, for instance, the non-aggression principle doesn't say anything about racism, and I am not a fan of racism. I think it's pretty despicable behavior by other human beings to judge somebody negatively based on the color of their skin, instead of looking at somebody as an individual. So considering libertarianism, like thin libertarianism, the non-aggression principle doesn't address that, shouldn't there be more to creating a good society than just non-aggression?
Well, I would say that there's more to creating a good society than non-aggression, right? But these things all happen as a matter of our own preferences.
But that doesn't have to do with libertarianism.
It has nothing to do with libertarianism. It has nothing to do with freedom. If I make fun of someone because of their race, like this would be called racist by a lot of people, right? And so this is nothing to do with your freedom. I'm not oppressing you if I make fun of your skin color or your wheelchair or your genitalia, right? So these are all things that I think think, I'm not. If somebody was like someone who, just hated black people, right? If they just like, I hate people because of their skin color, like I probably wouldn't want to hang out with that guy either. But that's just my own personal preference, and it has nothing to do with liberty. He's not an oppressor. He's not committing aggression, right? So if somebody wants
it's just a jerk.
If somebody wants to be a racist, I think the best thing that you could do is just go let them be a racist. If somebody wants to be separate from other races, then just go be separate from other races. I don't think it does any good to like compel you to, integrate into the society. Do I want to put a Klan member in a black neighborhood and tell him to get used to it? No, that's ridiculous. So, I don't like being the guy who makes the libertarian case for racism, right? Like, I don't like doing that because that's terribly unpopular, but it's an important thing to understand that when people are talking about unpopular things, this doesn't mean that these people need to be, expelled from the society and punished and all of these things.
Well, they probably would be, and this is kind of they'd be expelled from certain societies, and they end up, if they stuck with their racism, they'd end up in racist societies where people would probably not have to deal with the races they didn't like because the races they didn't like wouldn't live in those particular societies if we had a libertarian world. And this is one of the things that one of the reasons I haven't really waded into the thick and thin debate is because I largely think there is no debate. Look, the debate isn't here. Once you realize that the debate doesn't exist, then there's not a problem. And I just, I'm not excited about it because I believe that if you allow things to be voluntary and free, that competition will set in. We'll find out the good ideas from the bad ideas. The people that, have this idea and people have an opposite idea, one of their societies will do better. The other one will, fade away.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.